As the ark is closed, you may be seated.
On our first Friday living in Evanston this past June, I set out to do one of the most important nesting tasks of moving into a new home, making the bed. We finally had all of the right pieces: a beautiful bed frame, an extra firm mattress for Jacob, a cushy topper for me, and most exciting for me, a fluffy duvet and fancy sheets from our wedding registry. Among the things you'll learn about me in getting to know each other is how seriously I take my bedding. It's my mom's fault. You can talk to her about it after services. I was at the last step of the process, fluffing out the duvet, and I decided to stand up on the bed so I could fully shimmy the quilt into all of its corners. The thing is, I had never lived anywhere with a ceiling fan before. And so not only did I not remember that there was one above our bed, but I also didn't remember that it was on, and at its highest speed at that. So, ooh, yeah, that's what it sounded like. Bam! The spinning ceiling fan knocked me on my head, and that's how I came to spend our first Shabbat in the Chicagoland area with 4 staples right there. All things considered, it was really okay. I stayed conscious the whole time. I was able to call Jacob so he could come home from the gym and whisk me to the emergency room, and the whole fiasco was over within a couple of hours. And for those of you who care, somehow our new sheets escaped unscathed. Call it divine intervention or a bed lover's instincts, but I sprung off the bed before bleeding all over it. Even so, it was a really tricky way to start our lives here. Moving isn't easy. For most people, it's hopefully not as bloody, but settling in and finding belonging is hard. Unpacking boxes and arranging furniture is one thing. Meeting new people, navigating new social situations, and forging new relationships, that's much more challenging. But I'd argue it's far more important. What does finding your place look like? As we continue to re-emerge from the pandemic, it's clear that those years at home, the way we had to train ourselves to keep our distance from each other, the fear we felt around people, that has stayed with some of us. Separating ourselves from others may have originally been about safety, but at some point during the past few years, it turned into a decision of convenience or comfort. Why put yourself out there and risk social awkwardness when you can stay home with Netflix? Why? Because we're not wired to be alone. Evolutionarily, we are conditioned to seek out connection, and humanity itself survives because of being together. Love and belonging are right up there on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Safety and food, water, shelter, they're the only things deemed more important. And yet, the Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy, has declared that we are in a loneliness epidemic. He explains that when people are socially disconnected, their risk of anxiety and depression increases. So does their risk of heart disease, dementia, and stroke. Social connections have serious health and practical implications. Dr. Murthy's diagnosis doesn't even include the emotional and spiritual dimensions of loneliness, though. In the story of creation, as God creates the world, God calls everything good. The sun and moon and stars are good. The fish, birds, plants, those are good too. Everything is good until God notices that Adam, the first human, is the only human. Lo tov heyot ha'adam levado. It is not good for man. It is not good for a person to be alone. Our tradition deeply believes in the power of community. Our sage Hillel the elder declares, Al tifrosh min hatzibor. Do not separate yourself from community. The last commandment that Moses ever gives the Israelites was for them to gather. The men and women and little ones, the strangers and those within the city gates. And Maimonides, the medieval commenter, explains that this gathering that Moses was calling for served to encourage them to perform mitzvot and strengthen them in their true faith. We require a minyan, a quorum of 10 Jews in order to pray. We need a council of 3 on a Beit Din in order to welcome a convert or to dissolve a marriage. Judaism happens in community. It's not only Jewish teachings and laws that emphasize community, though, but our institutions as well. The Hebrew word for synagogue is Beit Knesset, house of gathering. My teacher, Rabbi Dr. Dahlia Marks, points out that the rabbis could have named it Beit Tefillah, a house of prayer, or Beit Elohim, house of God. But Knesah, gathering, was the critical piece for them. This is because synagogues are so much more than the places where we pray. They are places where the fullness of humanity is experienced. Yes, we have prayer services and we celebrate holidays, but we also study and learn. We mark important moments in our lives. We prepare food for the hungry and organize for justice. We enjoy each other's company around the mahjong table and schmooze at Oneg. Rabbi David Wolpe, the Rabbi Emeritus of Temple Sinai in Los Angeles, in reflecting on his decades in the rabbinate, shared the following in an op-ed this summer. He wrote, "Religion may be on the decline in this country and in the West, but if you wish to see the full panoply of a human life, moments of ecstatic joy and deepest sorrow, the summit of hopes and the connections of community, they exist concentrated in one place, your local house of worship." Synagogues are truly amazing. Part of why I wanted to become a rabbi was because I loved how synagogues and Jewish spaces made me feel like I belonged, and I wanted to create that for others. I grew up at a big 1,200 family synagogue in Scarsdale, New York. It wasn't our local temple. Westchester is sort of like the North Shore in that you only have to drive a few minutes to get to another Reform synagogue. But my parents decided to go there because my mom and the rabbi's wife were friends from college, and they wanted my younger brother, younger sister, and me to feel close to the clergy. It worked. I grew up feeling like the rabbi knew me, and I was totally comfortable there. My siblings and I would run through the hallways, and I got up to speak in front of the whole congregation at age 11 about Israel. My parents also chose to participate in a family Shabbat program called Sharing Shabbat, which helped us find our own smaller community within this massive shul. Every Saturday morning, we would go to these participatory and musical family services. And as we grew up with a cohort of 20 or so families, it was like a mini synagogue. Celebrating Shabbat as a family, in community, was a huge part of my growing Jewish identity, and it absolutely contributed to why I'm here as a rabbi today. In high school, I joined the more local synagogue to be with people I went to school with, Larchmont Temple, as an unaccompanied minor. I was struggling to find friends in high school in this big sea of Mamaroneck High School, and getting to know these people in a synagogue context changed my social life. Without the academic pressures, at programs whose sole purpose was to build connection to Judaism and to each other, I could relax and bond with people that I'd known for years, but in a new way, with real staying power. 2 of the women in our wedding this past May were friends that I made in LARFD, Larchmont Temple's youth program. Synagogue was also where I met my now husband, Jacob. We were two kids fresh out of college teaching Hebrew school at Central Synagogue in New York City. We worked there together for a year and a half before going on to rabbinical school at HUC. Central wasn't only where I learned how to be a Jewish educator, but it was where Jacob and I went to Shabbat services when we were first dating, and where we were blessed at our Ufruf before we got married. Whether exposing me to my professional and spiritual calling, giving me lifelong friends, or introducing me to my husband, synagogues have changed my life. I'm so grateful to be part of a tradition and a people that deeply values gathering together in community. I've seen and felt the power of the synagogue in my short time here at BJBE already. When I first started here and asked many of you why you were part of BJBE, every person shared that it was the warmth of the community that made you want to join. We don't all live on top of each other in the shtetl anymore, so the synagogue has become a place to share important life news that we'd otherwise carry alone. And when we know how each other is doing, we can be there for each other. Our caring community mobilizes to deliver meals to members who are sick or grieving or having a hard time. When something happens in the world that challenges us, we come here together to pray, to process, to protest. Because of the community engendered in this space, we organize rides for each other, we hype each other up for job interviews, we offer recommendations for doctors or doggy daycare or restaurants. When you're part of BJBE, you don't need to go through life alone. It's not such a revolutionary thing to tell you all why and that I believe in the power of the synagogue. I'm a rabbi. But you're all here today because in some way you believe in it too. But synagogues, even welcoming ones like BJBE, can also be intimidating. And it's all the more painful to feel isolated at a place that ostensibly exists to cultivate belonging. New members or prospective members, people who weren't born Jewish or who aren't Jewish or are feeling far from their Judaism, people who aren't from Chicago. It can be hard for those populations, myself included, to break into a space where it seems like everyone already knows each other, even though we know that's not actually true. Even people who have been part of this community for decades can feel disconnected. Some of you feel like you don't yet know the new clergy members, or you don't know enough about Judaism, or you don't know your child's bar mitzvah partner's parents. There are people who, now that their kids are grown, don't feel like they have a place at synagogue. Where do you fit in if you can't go to learning sessions during the day, and you don't have a matzah bal Shabbat to look forward to bring you to temple every month? Despite changing values, changing faces and contexts, the core values and connections of our community remain strong. And it's up to all of us, lifers and newbies alike, to invest in ensuring that this place is one in which each of us knows and feels that we belong. In this new year, there are two ideas that I want to offer as approaches for maintaining and deepening the bonds of our community. First, I'd like to speak to those of you who feel like they belong. We are in a privileged position to cultivate belonging for others in the way that we welcome people. The Springtide Research Institute, an organization focused on studying community, observed the ways that previously lonely people began to feel like they belonged. They distilled their findings into what they've coined the Belongingness Project, which identifies 3 distinct experiences that contribute to a person feeling like they belong: feeling noticed, feeling named, and feeling known. Noticing, naming, knowing. Sound like something that could happen in a synagogue? To build community and foster belonging, we need to notice each other. We need to look up when someone enters our space and keep an eye out for new faces, pay attention to the people who might be lingering alone or we don't yet know. This can happen in the village center on a quiet afternoon, during oneg or at services, in a class or at JLC pickup. Just acknowledging someone's arrival, a smile or a wave, can instantly generate a sense of belonging. It makes people feel seen and that their presence matters. Naming is the next step of the process, and it really is what it sounds like, making an effort to learn each other's names. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs of blessed memory defines community as that place where I am known by name and missed if I were gone. Or as a different sage, the sage of Cheers puts it, sometimes you want to go where everybody knows your name. Rabbi Sherman taught on Yom Kippur last year that names are essential parts of our identities. They're parts of our soul. So calling someone by their name triggers connection. It's why we have name tags for every program here at BJBE. We can't hope to be in community if we don't know how to address each other. Remembering the names of the people in front of us and using those names is an essential part of building deeper relationships. The last step of the Belongingness Project is being known. We are more than our attendance and more than our names. We're full human beings with families, jobs, passions, interests, fears, quirks. When we make an effort to know the people around us, to be curious about their lives and listen to their stories, we cultivate belonging. I gave a sermon back in July about my procrastination tendencies, and a congregant showed up the following week with a copy of the procrastination equation for me. I haven't read it yet, but I was so moved that this person who I'd only just met remembered this detail about me. I felt seen as myself, and it is so amazing that this is a gift each of us is capable of giving each other. Noticing, naming, and knowing. The synagogue, our synagogue, is tailor-made for creating belonging. And now for those of us who are feeling too new or a little lost or disconnected, and I'm still new enough to include myself in this group, hopefully our community will do these beautiful, welcoming things. But there are ways we can be proactive too. Dr. Stephanie Cacioppo, a professor of psychology and neuroscience at UChicago, points out that altruism and giving back can be a transformative way to build belonging. And Dr. Murthy adds that helping people is one of the most powerful antidotes to loneliness. Giving of ourselves is also a Jewish requirement for sacred spaces. Throughout our people's history, our sanctuaries and temples were only imbued with holiness when the people made it so. When the Israelites were wandering in the desert, the Mishkan, their traveling sanctuary, was built through the Israelites' contributions of time, effort, and materials. And then, when they settled in the land of Israel, the temple in Jerusalem was only made holy through the animal sacrifices of the Jews and the rituals conducted by the priests. Making a Jewish space more than a building, even a building as stunning as our own, requires the members of the community to show up, to bring their full selves, to offer their skills and care and effort and attention. In my short time here, I've already seen how the members of our community offer their gifts to make this place sacred. I see it when you play music or read Torah at Kol Shabbat, when you teach in our JLC and tutor our B'nai Mitzvah students, when you warmly welcome to people at services as greeters, when you ask hard and self-reflective questions in classes, when you make a minyan on Wednesday mornings for our group minyan, when you lend your professional expertise in finance or copy editing or event planning or fundraising, when you come together to uplift our high holiday prayers as a choir. There are so many ways we can share ourselves at BJBE. ways that we can not only be embraced, but embrace our community. Loneliness is the first thing that God says is not good. It is not good for a person to be alone. What is good, though, is being together. It is good to belong, good to feel known, good to be part of something. Hine ma tov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. How good and how pleasant it is for brothers and sisters and siblings, friends and near strangers, congregants and new ones and old. How good it is when all of us can sit together. In this year ahead, may we all come to know and remember just how good it is to be together. Shana Tova.
When you're not sure who you really are, when all you feel is the shape of your scars, and you have more wounds than you can count, open your eyes, look all around. You aren't alone, this is your home. Come and remember who you are here. Do this and remember who we are. Come and remember you belong here. All belong here. You don't know how to forgive, when locked doors seem like the only way to live, and you've got more questions than you can count. Open your eyes, look all around. You aren't alone.